Hey, what's up? I'm Darkbblue, trying to help everyone enjoy games in depth. In this video, I'll take you deep into the combat mechanics of AI Limit, a recent Souls-like title, and help you master its combat. Compared to traditional Souls games, the major feature of AI Limit is that it replaces stamina with energy. The traditional stamina consumes when you do anything and recovers when you don't do anything. Energy, on the other hand, recovers only when you actively use your basic attacks, including light, heavy, and charge attack, and consumes with skills and spells. This difference is enough to tell you that the basic attack and skill and spells are different. Now let me give you some additional information. Your basic attacks can barely stagger enemies. Even mobs have certain moves that grant them temporary stagger resistance. But skills and spells have very strong staggerability. Even elites and bosses can be staggered by a large portion of skills and spells. Now let's do some reasoning. Clearly, in AI Limit, the combat rotates between a generator phase and a spinner phase. Furthermore, in the generator phase, since basic attacks are poor at staggering enemies, you need to interact with enemies. Basically, it means enemies can attack freely, and you need to successfully evade each incoming attack and manage to counterattack. Then, in the spinner phase, as skills and spells can stagger enemies, you can see it as a bonus time which is entirely safe. Such rotation between an interactive generator phase and a safe stun-locking spinner phase is the fundamental logic of AI Limit. Of the two phases, the generator phase is more important and is the core of this game. The spinner phase is just a bonus time that can be totally escaped if you choose to, but the generator phase can hardly be avoided. Besides, the enemy designs of this game are also focused on the interaction experience. So if you want to master the combat in AI Limit, you need to master interaction. So how can we approach the interaction thing? Isn't it as simple as timing your dodge so that you are in the iframes when the attack hits you? No, there's in fact a lot more to cover. I'll introduce to you the diverse interaction tools and positioning strategies further in this video. AI Limit gives you a lot of interaction tools beyond the basic dodging, such as shield guard, parry, or repositioning. Each of the tools have its own suitable usage. Maybe some attacks of an enemy can be more easily dodged with a certain tool, and the other attacks with a different tool. Therefore, before you try to memorize the movesets and evading methods of an enemy, it's important that you first find the suitable tools for these attacks. Now let me show you all the interaction tools and their niche. First, basic dodging. It gives you some iframes, basically a short time window during which your character is invulnerable. You need to well time your dodge so that you are in the iframes when you are hit by an attack. Remember, timing is the key for basic dodging. Basic dodging is the most basic and generic tool, but it's not always the most suitable given a certain situation. The next tool is called repositioning. To simply put it, you can reposition yourself in a certain location such that your character won't be hit by the attack at all. In this way, you no longer need to mind the timing thing. As a result, repositioning is in fact easier to perform than timing-based dodging, but it's harder to find out that an attack can be evaded in this way. Know that you can employ dodging when using repositioning. In fact, the basic dodging allows you to cover a very long distance quickly, which is very handy for the purpose of repositioning. For example, it's a good strategy to dodge backward when you see a necro doing a fancy long combo to reposition out of its attack range. There's also an enhanced dodging move in AI Limit that makes you cover even longer distance. Its restriction is that the enhanced dodging consumes energy. Basically, there are three types of repositioning. Range-based repositioning. Some attacks can only hit a short range, so you can get away from the enemy. Angle-based repositioning. Some attacks such as thrust, uppercut, and downward slash can only hit a small angle, so you can move sideways to evade the attack. And finally, height-based repositioning. Some attacks hit too high, while certain movesets of your character makes her lower her stance, so you can stay safe in this way. The first two types of repositioning are very common and easy to conduct, while the last type can be a bit rare and challenging. All in all, repositioning can be easier to perform than timing if you know an attack can be evaded in this way. So it's advised to actively look for evading strategies using repositioning. But not all attacks can be evaded in this way. If you find it hard to reposition a certain attack, simply choose a different interaction tool. The third tool is parrying. Its biggest advantage is that you can interrupt enemies' ongoing combo. So if the rest part of the combo is too hard to evade, you can choose to interrupt it at an early stage using parrying. This kind of Reaper enemy is a very good example of the application of parrying. We also need to mention the disadvantage of parrying. It's harder to time. So when you dodge, you almost immediately enter the iframes. But this is not the case with parrying, forcing you to practice a lot to master parrying. So if you feel it's tough to parry a certain enemy, just choose a different interaction tool. The last we'll cover is shield blocking. It can be useful in two cases. First, if you find it hard to know when to time your dodging based on the visual cues, use shield blocking. One example is the ranged attack of the Necroboss, and another example is the AoE air burst attack of the Church Supervisor. Second, if consecutive attacks are too frequent to be entirely dodged, shield blocking can be useful. For instance, this can be a good strategy against necromobs. The drawback is that you cannot block the entire damage of strong attacks, cannot entirely block status effect, and blocking consumes energy. So you cannot rely on blocking too much, save it for the critical situation only. So that's the diverse interaction tools in AI Limit and when to use them. Remember, pick a suitable tool before you start to do memorization. Next, let's talk about positioning strategies. It means where to stand relatively to the enemy during combat. For example, you can choose to move clockwise or stand in front of the enemy, and so on. It's also targeted at reducing the difficulty of interaction, which is done in 4 ways. First, positioning strategies help you unify how you evade each different attack. If you tackle each attack too differently, it'll become very hard for you to react, which shows the advantage of unified evading methods. For instance, you can keep moving clockwise and dodge to left given any incoming attack. Second, it can help you use the repositioning tool naturally. For example, if an enemy has a lot of attacks that can be repositioned, if you move counterclockwise, then keep moving so during the entire combat instead of only when you see the enemy attacking. Then it makes it easier for you to observe. It's common that you want to stand in front of the enemy if you aim to use parrying, as doing so makes it more convenient to observe the visual cues. In another case, some enemies have charging attacks that are very quick. As a result, if you stand too close to them, it will be hard to observe and dodge the charging attacks, while standing a distance away from them can ease the practice. Lastly, modify how the enemy can behave. Usually you may want to stand very distant away from the enemy so that it will use ranged attacks often, which might give you a better chance for counterattacking. With the 4 ways in which positioning strategies can be helpful being said, now let's go through the common strategies you may find useful. clockwise and counterclockwise movement, usually used to unify evading methods for different attacks and for natural repositioning. This four-legger enemy can be much easier to deal with if you keep moving counterclockwise, as an example. Standing in front of the enemy, usually used for parrying. Standing in a moderate distance away from the enemy. This is useful if you aim to dodge backward and use the range-based repositioning. It's also helpful to observe and react to quick charging attacks. Lastly, standing in a very long distance away from the enemy, mainly used to modify enemy behavior. All in all, positioning strategy is another dimension besides picking the suitable interaction tool if you aim to make interaction easier. If you are having trouble with an enemy, maybe try a different positioning strategy. In conclusion, in this video, you have learned that rotation between generator phase and spinner phase, which is the fundamental logic of AI limit, and we have emphasized that the interactive generator phase is the core gameplay. Then I give suggestions about how to master the interaction combat based on interaction tools and positioning strategy. If you want to play games into depth together with me, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, see you around.